Hello, everyone. Welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a podcast dedicated to helping individuals have a successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business. I'm Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center and your host for today. With this in mind, I'm actually someone who's worked with accounting professionals for more than 20 years, helping individuals actually establish their own businesses, offering accounting services, and excelling to the point that they're offering value-added services and retaining their customers as their profit and growth experts. With this, they're getting paid what they're worth, offering the premier accounting services in their area. This is all through Universal Accounting Center. It's an accounting school that's been dedicated since 1979 to offer the training, certifications, coaching, and support that accounting professionals need to actually offer quality accounting, bookkeeping, tax services to their clientele. With this, we do want to encourage you to actually subscribe to this podcast and listen to the other episodes that we have. Enjoying this because it's meant to help accounting professionals confidently and competently offer quality accounting services and get paid what they're worth. Now, today we actually have Brittany Brown. I'm excited to welcome her to the show. Brittany is the founder and CEO of LedgerGurus. She's a friend of mine, someone I've known for a number of years, and we have some mutual acquaintances. In fact, although we live very similar or very close to one another, we typically don't see one another but at accounting conferences of all places. So we have to travel the country to actually bump into one another. And one of the things that I'm quite impressed with is she has a company providing outsourced accounting services to other companies and specializing in e-commerce. The e-commerce space. So she's actually a CPA, a QuickBooks Pro advisor. She's certified in QuickBooks Online Advanced, and she is the driving force behind her firm's rapid growth and innovation. She's been growing now from 2 employees to 40 employees in the last 4 years and established LedgerGurus as an established leader within the industry of the e-commerce space. And one of the things that I think is quite compelling is that she's a regular guest at some of these conferences, sharing her information, her journey, and her story, which she's going to do with us here today. So Brittany, welcome, and thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Roger. I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, the first thing I want to point out is with regards to our background, we've kind of crossed paths over the years and only recently have started, I've given you some referrals. You've worked with some of our clients. It's been kind of a mutual relationship that's developed over the years.
Right. And some interesting history about Roger and I as well is that the man who originally founded Universal Accounting that Roger has taken the mantle on and ran with that, 2 of his children have been good friends of mine for years. One of them was my senior when I worked at KPMG, and the other one was when I moved to a local accounting firm called Squire. He worked on the team with me, and so it's been a lot of fun to get to know Roger from the back end also. Like I feel like the man who founded the company is very, very, very lucky that he had you, Roger, to take over. Roger is very conscientious about what he does. I think you're very innovative. I've loved working with you. I've loved what I've seen that you're doing. I'm a big fan of what you've accomplished. And it's fun to have heard about your business, Universal Accounting, from Misty and Brian before I ever met you, and then to get to see what you've done with it, especially as you've taken the leadership mantle yourself. And I applaud what you've done, Roger. He's very lucky to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I understand and appreciate that. It's been an amazing journey over these last number of years being president of Universal Accounting Center. When Alan retired, he passed on a very important mantle, and I've been pleased with the experience and journey that we've had. It's been a difficult row at times, but we've definitely achieved a lot, and I'm very proud of that. So, Misty, Brian, the Bostroms happen to be an accounting family of sorts. A lot of people are in the accounting profession. I'm pleased to know that you had some good working experiences with them. But I'd like to kind of start with your own journey and introduce people to what it is you did to start in the accounting profession. What drew you to it?
Yeah, that's a great story. But one thing I forgot, I can't believe I forgot this connection. I'm appalled that I forgot this connection.
What?
But we actually hired the 3rd sibling. So Heidi works as one of our bookkeepers now.
That's true. You did have Heidi.
That's right, because she doesn't have the last name Bostrom anymore. Sometimes I forget that she's connected that way. But yeah, I love Heidi. I employ Heidi. And you're right. Talk about an accounting family. They really, really are.
That's so funny. So we got Misty, Brian, and Heidi that all have kind of interwoven themselves between the two of us. That's great.
Yeah, and all in such separate ways. Like it's so funny. It's like it's just ironic. It's so ironic that our lives have overlapped with theirs so much.
Well, it just goes to show how small a world it truly is, because you're right. Heidi didn't come to work with you necessarily through either Misty or Brian. It was totally independent. And then you've got
Right.
Misty, independent of Brian, and your interactions with both of them. And here I am on the fringe, and we start working together as well. So it's kind of phenomenal.
I know, it's so funny. It really is. Yeah, it really is so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So back to you. You've got your experience. Where did this all start from? What was your draw to the accounting profession?
So the way I got launched into accounting goes back several years before I actually became an accountant, and began with really personal crisis. So what happened for me is that I was a young mom with three little kids, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I was about 26 years old when I suddenly found out that my husband at the time was living a bit of a double life, and basically overnight, he left us, moved to another state, married the woman he was having an affair with. And I went from having really no college education at all. I had an associate's degree from a junior college and no real work experience. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for about 7 years. Before that, my only work experience had been like Kmart and Arby's. So definitely nothing to fall back on. And at the time, because none of my kids were even in full day school, the cost of daycare for 3 kids would have been more than I could have possibly earned at the options I had available to me at the time, which would have been things like Walmart, Kmart, Arby's, McDonald's, like those things that required the skill set that I had was so lacking. That was basically what I was qualified to do. And so I ended up deciding to go back to school instead. And I was originally going to go into marketing. And when I took my first accounting class, it just really clicked for me. I got it. I understood it. It all made sense to me. My professor at the time said, if you're going to, if this makes sense to you, then you really ought to consider accounting, because the job opportunities are greater, the pay is better, the flexibility and ability to kind of create your own schedule and create your own destiny is greater. And I looked into it and found that sure enough, he was right about that. And so I decided to switch my major to accounting. And if I was going to be in accounting, then I was literally like right between the school that I was going to was a college called UVU at the time, and BYU, which had like the #1 accounting program in the country at the time that I was making this decision. And so if I was going to go into accounting, then I might as well switch to the school that was right next to me that had a great accounting school. And that experience completely changed my life. I mean, it took me from somebody who was really broken and struggling and suffering and trying to rebuild my life and my identity to, I came out of that program with a master's degree in accounting. I was one of the most highly recruited students coming out of that. I had offers from either verbal or written offers from all 4 of the big 4, plus several local firms as well. And I was like a changed person. However, in that school, the downside was the only thing that we really were exposed to as far as future job opportunities was Big 4 accounting. And at the time that I went through that entire program, I was a single mom. At the time that I graduated, I was still a single mom. And so after my time with KPMG, where I worked with Misty, they gave me a job offer, and I interned with them. And in fact, Misty was a big part of my decision-making process on this, because I was really struggling knowing what I should do and if I should accept that job offer. And she was very honest with me about what it had been like working for Big 4. And I realized that I could either be a great parent and stink it up as a employee, or I could be a great employee and stink it up as a parent, that I couldn't live in that space in peace with myself on both sides of that spectrum. So I ended up declining the offer, and I took a job with a local accounting firm instead, Squire. They were a lot more flexible with hours and stuff like that. I think the Big 4 has gotten a lot better since then, but not like way better. I mean, it still has a reputation for a reason. But then through my experience with working with this smaller accounting firm, I gained a really solid understanding of QuickBooks. I was on their QuickBooks advisory team. And so I got to see QuickBooks in action. I had no exposure to QuickBooks before that. And so I also got to see how small business owners thought, what they needed, what their gaps were in their financial operations. And it was not shortly after that I went to a conference. It was actually Scaling New Heights 2014, I believe. Yeah, 2014.
Uh-huh.
And at that conference, they were talking about like the way that the accounting industry had gone, how everything had changed, and how it had all become cloud-based. And I suddenly realized that the time had come when the tools of the space were going to allow for really meaningful at-work home. And even though at the time that this all happened, I didn't really want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't have a ton of like actual job experience at that point in time. I had basically worked just enough hours to get my CPA license when this happened. I felt so compelled to launch LedgerGurus because I saw the need initially on the employee side to provide something where people could, like you were saying in your intro, be paid what they were worth, and be able to have the opportunity to do really meaningful work in a flexible way. So anyways, even though I wanted to own a business, like I wanted a shot in the head, I actually really saw and had a lot of passion for what owning a business would do for us, for our employees, how it would empower stay-at-home work opportunities that I was really passionate about because of my history. And that's kind of how I fell into accounting and owning a business.
Well, there's a few things here that I need to kind of address. One, I did not know your story, and I think it is phenomenal. And I'm going to mention it for two reasons. One, obviously, there's a lot of people that can relate to getting into the accounting profession, not so much by choice, but by circumstance. There are those people that early on in their youth, they get drawn to the profession, the numbers, they get drawn maybe because of family. That wasn't your story. Your story was you were kicked in the gut. You had to find a solution, and McDonald's wasn't going to cut it. And so you had to find yourself in a situation of having to go to school, get your master's degree. You had to double down and really kind of commit yourself to become that provider for the family. And as a single mother, you rose to the occasion. And I have to applaud you for that, because I think that's not only significant, but it's definitely something that a lot of people can get some inspiration from. The second thing I want to point out is I didn't know that story, and I can relate to it at a distance because my sister-in-law went through that exact story. She had two children, and she had her 4-year degree and a teaching certificate with the intent of going to school and being a teacher, had your same story experience. And with that, she chose to go back to get her master's degree in accounting, and she graduated from UVU and was the valedictorian for the school and spoke at the commencement. And it was a huge change for her. And she obviously now was in that accounting world, much like yourself, and became a CPA. So I mean, it's just kind of phenomenal.
That's so
I didn't know
crazy.
that was. I almost wonder whether or not you bumped into each other at the school at UVU before you transferred to BYU. But there you go.
I'm so proud of her. I really am. I'm so proud of her for rising from the ashes to really become a true professional. You know what I mean? Instead of just surviving, she's thriving.
Oh, exactly. And one of the things that was fascinating is our involvement with that is my wife ended up babysitting and watching the two kids, then my niece and nephew, and we raised them for a number of years while she went back and got her master's degree. So there was about a 2-year period that her children were at our place, and we raised them as our own, in essence, just because she was so committed to getting through her schooling. And I have a phenomenal relationship with my niece and nephew because of that. And, like you, she moved on, has a new family. She's actually had a lot of success, but there's that kick to the groin that she likewise experienced. And so I've seen it at a close distance, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
It's funny because one of the criticisms we get of our business model right now is that we have allowed for so much of our workforce to be part-time. And we have a lot of colleagues in this space now that also own firms, and they're constantly telling me that so many of the problems we face are because of our part-time workforce, which I don't disagree with. I think it's been a source of great strength for us and a source of great struggle for us. But my the passion I have for the ability to provide work opportunities that don't really ask people to prioritize work over their family has been such a passion of mine for so long that I continue to fight the battle of allowing for a significant part of our workforce to be part-time because of my background, I just cannot help but have such a soft place in my heart for those who are trying to balance those two things.
Well, and that's what led you to start your business and carry you to this point that you are in. And I think that unique perspective you have is the catalyst, or like you described, the passion to keep doing this. You're going to push through some of the challenges like someone else wouldn't just because of your own history.
Right. Very true.
This is a great thing. Okay, so let me do this. I know that you started your business. You've shared with us the why. In business, what's your mantra? What's one of the things that you use as kind of your grounding or your motivation on a day-to-day basis?
That's a great question. Probably the one that immediately comes to my mind is the thought that it won't always be this hard. And what I mean by that is, and the sister mantra to that is, I won't always have no idea. Because I have found that because I started a business when I had virtually no prior professional experience to fall back on, there has been thing after thing after thing after thing after thing that I have had to figure out that I literally had absolutely no idea how to do, including like right from the beginning, because all of my work experience that I did have was in audit and then in QuickBooks consulting, neither of which are actually running the transactional and financial operations of other businesses. When we got our first clients, I literally had no idea what we even would do for them because I had never seen in action the daily operations of accounting. Like I had never been a bookkeeper. I had never run payroll. I had never run bill pay. I had never run invoices. Like all of the things that keep a business going and alive from a financial perspective, I had only ever seen on let me show you how QuickBooks can do that, or let me audit the financials that are coming out of the other end of it. So there's not been one thing, not one, in the business except for my foundational ability to use QuickBooks really well, which I have been really, really grateful for because it was such a solid start. But there's not been one thing that I have done that I have had a background to fall back on showing me how to do it. And in fact, it's one of the big jokes of our business that, my husband is now our COO, and he brought to the business lots and lots and years and years and years of great corporate experience and an understanding of how things should work. And he's made such a powerful difference, but he didn't get involved till we were 2 years in. And up until that point, he was involved, but he was involved in a very back end way. Like he was our IT guy and he would like set up new emails for me when somebody got involved, but he was not involved. And so when it came to like hiring new people, I had no idea how to go about that. When it came to like implementing processes or procedures, I had no idea. So every single step of the way, I've had to figure out with really no foundation at all. And I have found that just digging in and starting creates foundation, and pretty soon you're off and running. But like every single time I start this journey again on some new thing that I have to figure out, I remember it won't always be this hard. I won't always have no idea.
Well, you're definitely a problem solver. You come into a situation and you push through it to find the resolution. And I'm sure that pays off with all the client relationships that you have, because as they present situations or challenges, you rise to the occasion. So that's powerful. Here's a question that, just because of the context of the podcast of building the premier accounting firm, we always talk about mapping the business and identifying within the corporation, the company, of the three things, which is the most important. So I'm going to kind of set this stage here. We first talk about in mapping the business, it's an acronym for marketing, accounting, and production. So marketing and sales is everything that you're doing to generate the new clientele. Accounting is referencing the services that you're providing, what you actually do for the client, what they're paying you to do. Production is the workflow, the efficiency in which you actually do your work that determines whether or not you're profitable. It's the onboarding of the client, it's the client relations, it's retaining the client, the lifetime value of that client. It's all of those things on the production side. So what I was going to ask is, You have experience in all three of these. Regarding
Hmm.
marketing and sales, what advice would you give to someone as they're looking to grow their business and they're trying to find the new client, that next client?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's been one of those things that it's like was one of the biggest, most painful pain points for me that I was lacking because in all of my college education of like learning to be an accountant, I never learned how to
Uh-huh.
sell. And so when I found myself as our primary salesperson having to sell, I really, really had no idea where to even start with that. And I, in fact, had a friend come over who also owned a business, and I asked her to role play with me and show me how she sold because I literally had no idea. So originally, my entire strategy was like, go out and be friendly. And frankly, like that strategy got us to over $1 million a year in revenue before it became kind of an inadequate strategy. And really, the only reason it became an inadequate strategy is because I was tired of spending all of my time in sales related activities. And so I needed to pass on that mantle to somebody else and let them take that over. And I found that like my scintillating personality was an unscalable marketing practice. Do you know what I mean? And at that point, I really had to like figure out, okay, what does marketing actually look like? Because I did a lot of things just by instinct that were good, but you can't really pass off a mantle of sales by instinct. You have to have some way, unless you hire somebody who has a lot more sales experience than you do, and you can pass that off to
Mm-hmm.
them. Like that's an option, but I didn't have that option to just hire a salesperson. And so as far as marketing and sales go, like it really did start with just get the word out. Like go to every single thing you can and talk to every single person you can. And the biggest thing about that I found was not, don't sit and give them your elevator speech about what you do, but build relationships, make friends. I heard once that the two most important things you can do, the two most important traits you can convey to people to make them want to do business with you in the future is likability and
Mm-hmm.
competency. And so when I was out and about in the market and I was meeting with people and I was, going to events and I was just making friends, I was really focusing on, yeah, I'm an accountant and I own a firm that does accounting, but really I was trying to convey competency and likability first and foremost. And that became really effective. Like I said, we grew to over $1 million a year in revenue using that strategy alone before we started branching out into other strategies. I would say that our decision to niche in e-commerce made a huge difference with our marketing abilities because when you're a generalist, it's hard to speak to any one group really
Uh-huh.
effectively. And when you're speaking to the masses, it's hard to have anyone really hear your message. But when you start to niche, it allows you to speak specifically to the pain points that industry is experiencing. And your marketing can be a lot more compelling and your messaging can become a lot more compelling. That's when we were able to like go digital, for example. We now rank pretty highly if you were to just like Google e-commerce accountant. We rank pretty highly because we blog very regularly about all the pain points around the e-commerce accountant. I mean, the e-commerce space and their accounting needs. And we've been able to become a lot more deliberate in our marketing
Mm-hmm.
activities. But really, I'm not convinced we wouldn't have been more effective if I just hadn't got really tired of being our primary marketing and salesperson, like going out and just making friends with everybody in the whole wide world and telling them what you do was really our best marketing strategy and our most effective marketing strategy we've ever
I'm
deployed.
so glad you shared that. We actually speak similarly here at Universal Accounting. What we emphasize as being the two keys to success is confidence and competence. So,
Ah,
similarly to your competence, what we emphasize is that's great. You can speak to a business owner and explain that you do accounting and that you actually can prepare their financial reports. And as you go through this, they may pay you to do it. But if you go back to the office and you're incompetent as you're preparing and doing these reports, recording the transactions to the point of preparing the financials, the challenge is I'm not going to necessarily accuse you of producing erroneous financials. I'll trust that the numbers are accurate, but rather than taking 10 hours, if it took you 20 hours to do the work, you're taking far too long. Therefore, it's not profitable. And so the fee you're charging isn't a profitable fee, and you're going to quickly get frustrated and end your company. So I think competency is huge as to the profitability of what you're doing. The confidence, you said likability. We speak to confidence being, you need to be able to look a business owner in the eye and say, I can do this. And if there's any doubt in your own mind, if there's any hesitation on your part, they're not going to believe that you can do it if you don't believe it yourself. And so that confidence becomes very important. Now, how do you get to the point of having that confidence? How do you get to that point of being competent? There's a lot behind that, and it varies person to person and business to business. Each firm has its own way of addressing those two things, but those two keys are the keys to success, if you were. So I like how you've included likability. I mean, you've got to have a relationship with your clients. You've got to be someone that's approachable. They're going to share with you things that they wouldn't otherwise share with anyone else, even their spouse, perhaps. And so here you are in a position of confidence. Do they actually then like you and enjoy being with you and open up to you? So I liked how you shared that. So let me ask this. Accounting services, you're looking at your accounting services. What do you feel of the offerings you provide is the thing that draws in the customers? What do you think is the thing that your customers pay the most for? Why are they paying you to do their accounting?
Oh, that's a good question. And I love the point you just made about if your work is crap, then there's really nothing that can compensate for that. Like if my primary strategy is word of mouth and making friends, and then people turn their work over to me and it's garbage, like I knew that we had finally started to make progress when I started to get leads in the door that were outside of my primary personal
Yeah.
network. So I would have people contact me that I had never talked to before, and whoever referred them to me was also somebody I had never talked to before. At that point, I knew that we had finally started to make real strides. And this was before we had any sort of like online marketing campaign or anything like that. And it's because at a certain point, the quality of our work began to speak for itself and create its own momentum. Like if you're doing garbage work, it's very hard for word of mouth to do anything but disserve you. Because if you're constantly trying to compensate for the reputation of bad work, it's really hard to create momentum. But if you can create a reputation of doing really quality work very, very well, then it creates its own momentum. And anybody can achieve that. It's just a matter of learning the correct principles, learning to think about things in the correct way and learning to apply the tools in the correct manner and learning to take advantage of the efficiencies that are available in this space to allow the time that you're spending to come down, that allows your rates to become reasonable. Like that journey of doing work competently is a journey that anybody can embark on. And I speak to that from experience because, like I said, when we first started, we had no idea what we were doing. Like I had never been taught how to be a bookkeeper, how to do the various things. I had I hired consultants. I engaged in trainings like what Universal Accounting offers. I went to conferences, like I soaked everything up. But that journey to competency is available to anybody who engages in that road. So I know that's not the question you just asked me. So let me answer the question you just asked me. Unless you want to say something.
No. You're on a roll. I want you to answer now that question I posed regarding the services. What accounting services is what brings the client to you? What are they looking for that you're offering?
So what they pay us for. So one of the things that we have found is that e-commerce accounting is really fundamentally different than other types of accounting. And what I mean by that is in other industries that we've worked with, we start with the bank account and we start with the credit card feeds. And we start by getting on top of those transactions, coding them correctly, then adding upon that the accrual activities to complete the picture, maybe any journal entries that are necessary. But it always starts with the cash accounting part, which is the credit card and the bank activity. Well, and if you get the credit card and the bank activity, then most of what you do will be correct. But in e-commerce businesses, the majority of their activity is not passing through their bank account credit cards. It's actually passing through the channels. So Amazon, Shopify, Magento, eBay, Etsy, the different channels that they're selling on is where shipping fees are being collected, merchant service fees are being collected. They're gathering sales tax. They're they're doing refunds and chargebacks and paying the fees of the actual platform itself. All of that is happening on the channel and within the payment processors of the channel. And the only thing you're seeing deposited in the bank account is the summary of all of that activity. And so if you take the basic bookkeeper cash accounting approach to an e-commerce company, you miss 95% of the data that they really need because it's not available in the bank account. It's only available in the channel. So we have been able to charge a premium for our services because what we do is we go directly into the channel. We've learned to find the reports and pull down the data in the channels themselves and translate that into a reconciliation between the channel activity to what actually processed through the payment processor and what actually processed through the payment processor to what actually deposited in the bank account. So there's a full reconciliation of all data from the front to the end where we're capturing everything that happens. And because that requires like a lot of knowledge of not only the payment processors, but the channels themselves, of which there are literally dozens, and the reports on the back end of all of them look different. That has been a real thing that our clients have been willing to pay for. Another thing is, because we're e-commerce specialized, we now have a full inventory team that deals with the inventory needs of our clients, allowing for us to track good cost of goods sold and inventory, which is also something that we didn't normally see as part of our other clients in our e-commerce. And finally, sales tax. So sales tax has become a major, major need for the e-commerce businesses.
Yeah.
Originally, we partnered with other companies that were doing that, but we just found we just couldn't rely on the consistency of their results. We ended up building our own sales tax practice, and it's now the fastest growing practice for us internally is sales tax. So those are the things that have really allowed us to charge a premium on what we do. But I would say, like, as far as our non-e-commerce clients, it's our understanding of the flow of all the transactional operational information. It's being more than just a bookkeeper. It's like taking off of their shoulders the burden of the full gamut of it, the payroll, the bill pay, the invoicing, the calculating of the like sales commissions and all of that sort of stuff. If it's accounting related, we take it off their shoulders. And it's so much more than just we code your transactions and give you profit and loss statements. It's that we are an integral part of your operations.
I love it. One of the things that I think is so important with what you've shared is the fact that as an accounting professional, with accounting being the language of business, when you take on a client and they're doing the e-commerce as you described, at first, the financial reports, the P&L, let's say, when you look at the income statement, you're going to see these bulk deposits, and there's so much data that's behind that's existing in whether it be Amazon or Etsy of all the transactions, and it's the history of all that as an accounting professional, in order for you to properly advise and work with your client, you've got to become intimately aware of all that goings on that's behind that single entry that's going into the financials, because it's all occurring on that other platform, and you need to become familiar with it. So for you to be able to extract that data and start interpreting it for them and give it to them in an accounting format, I think is very powerful, and obviously that's what they're paying you for. So well done.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to break away for a quick moment and just do a mention of our sponsor. Our sponsor is Universal Accounting Center. And what we're promoting is the program Becoming a Profit and Growth Expert. This is an opportunity for you to actually get the marketing and sales training you need to go out and find the clients you would like to have, your ideal clients, so that you can get paid what you're worth. The purpose of Becoming a Profit and Growth Expert is actually to address and help all of your clients with the most common problem faced by small businesses, which is cash flow. As their profit and growth expert, you're able to apply very, very proven and very specific strategies to help them take their business from red to black. It's the accountant's guide to actually help them implement in their business strategies to remain cash positive and have the money that they need in the bank to run their business. It's a powerful program to empower you to actually get the engagements that you're looking for and get paid what you're worth as a profit and growth expert, offering quality services so that you can in fact be the premier accounting firm in your area. So for more information about becoming a profit and growth expert, reach out to Universal Accounting Center and find out more now. Now, Brittany, here's the next part of mapping the business as I introduced it. MAP being that acronym for marketing and sales, the accounting services you're providing, but now the production. Let's go into your firm. As you're looking at your business, you've obviously got this business model of employing part-time people. You said there's some challenges related to that. We've actually done a discussion in a previous webinar about onboarding clients. What can you share about the behind the scenes, the production side, the practice management of your business that you think is unique and integral to your success?
Yeah, great question. So, as I mentioned earlier, our COO came on about 2 years into the business. And at the time that he came on board, we were at about $250,000 a year in revenue. And I felt in many ways like I was building a house of cards. And the reason why I felt that way is because I was great at going out and creating the momentum and creating the opportunities and, getting people excited about what we were doing. But I was really relying primarily on the heroics of employees, basically, to do what they were supposed to be doing with very little oversight from me and without a lot of processes. It's kind of a miracle that a lot of our early employees stayed with us, because when I look back on what they went through professionally because of my lack of everything, really, everything, I just didn't know anything about all of this sort of stuff. It was really a wing and a prayer and the heroics of them. And so one of the first things he did was he brought operational soundness to our organization. Now, I am convinced that part of the reason we have been so successful as a business so quickly is because we had those two elements. We had me with my head in the clouds and him with his feet on the ground, and a great tension between the two of us. I'm always constantly creating momentum, and he was always constantly creating structure around that momentum. And if we didn't have those two things, like if it had been him and him alone, like we would have had a really solid solution from day one, but not as much momentum. And I already know what it looked like to have me and not him, which was a whole lot of momentum and not a lot of structure.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of the day, like, you can only keep your eye on so many things. And as an organization grows, if you don't have fundamental things and processes in place, you can only scale so big before it all really comes tumbling down, because you lose insight into engagements. You have engagements that you don't know if what you promised is really happening or not. You don't have visibility into the workflow. You hire a new employee, you throw them at a couple of engagements, you don't really know how those engagements are going. You end up, the larger your organization grows, the more you wind up out of tune with everything that's happening. And one of the things that Stephen did when he came in is he brought structure around all of that. And some of the most key initiatives he created was he established a hiring process that allowed us to get consistent people in consistently of quality. He implemented a training program that had 12 weeks where they were trained on different things like financial statement management, budgeting, how to think like a business owner, how to think like a controller, basic. They all have to get like QuickBooks certified. They were mentored by somebody else who was farther along the way than they were. They had regular weekly check-ins with somebody who was farther, like all of those things. None of that was happening when it was just me and me alone. And he built upon that to expand into a way that we now track the visibility of what's happening on our engagements, so that we have an understanding of what we've promised when we've sold it. And we use Asana to track the deliverables of each engagement based on what we sold. And then we use Grow to track the status of deliverables to help us understand whether or not a project is on target or not. And our team members are required to report out every single week on their deliverables. So if we have engagements that are in the red because some of the tasks are more than 2 days behind, they have to write an explanation as to why the deliverables are behind and their plan for, getting on top of that. Before that, honestly, we had none of that. It was like the only time we knew something was going wrong was when we got a message from a client basically blowing us up and saying, hey, I paid you to do this and it's not happening and now I'm mad. And it has been quite a learning journey. We're still not perfect at it. Roger got to see, you got to see firsthand when we struggled with our managers on an engagement that you sent our way, and we had to correct that problem. before everything imploded because the manager was not executing in the way that we needed her to execute. And we ended up having to make a staff change on that. But the thing about that is we knew there was a problem before the client knew there was a problem. And that's where I can say that we have really matured as an organization. Is it used to be we didn't know there was a problem until the client told us there's a problem. And now we know there's a problem before the client tells us there's a problem. And as a result, we can work to actively fix those situations before we lose clients. That particular client that you referred our way is still a client of ours. And we could have lost her 3 or 4 months ago if we had not known there was a problem and taken action before she was angry enough to leave. You know what I mean?
Well, one of the things that I think you're just really testifying to is the fact that as a company grows, I think at first there's this reactionary experience. It's basically as problems arise with the client, you're responding, and you eventually get to a point where you start to put in processes, systems, procedures that help you to be basically ahead of the curve. And now you're not reacting, you're actually being preemptive, and you're dealing with your clients in a more responsive way because you're actually letting them know and filling them in and keeping them informed rather than being caught off guard on the defensive. You went through that evolution, and it's obvious that the systems are what afforded you that transition. So that's phenomenal. I love that. So on that note, why do you train bookkeepers to think like accountants and then train accountants to think like advisors? That evolution, you were just speaking of that a moment ago.
Yeah, and I would say it's been a core part of our culture, and part of the reason we've been so successful is because we initially, when we didn't have a lot of options of who to hire, I was just hiring people that seemed great, and a lot of times they didn't have bookkeeping skills. And so by default, because I'm kind of a trainer at heart, when I started teaching people how to be bookkeepers, I taught them how to think like accountants. Like I started with the fundamentals of, understanding journal entries, understanding chart of accounts, understanding financial statements, understanding what you were building when you were transaction coding, understanding how to look for both sides of every entry, how to think every screen you touched as a journal entry that was happening behind the scenes, so you could make deliberate, conscientious, educated decisions about things like, I just saw money come in to the business. Rather than calling it income, I'm going to identify whether it was really income or whether it was an equity contribution from an owner. We saw that happen with a lot of our clients with their prior bookkeepers, as they would, invest money into the business and the bookkeeper would call it income, therefore making it a taxable transaction in a way that was really problematic. And I found that by giving our bookkeepers the fundamental understanding of accounting principles and then layering upon that best practices around the tools of the space, so, QuickBooks, Bill.com, Expensify, whatever it was we were teaching them, we didn't have to catch their mistakes. We could review their work from a higher level, but trust their ability to make informed decisions because they understood the fundamentals. And as we built upon that, they became such competent, capable people. I mean, we had one of our early success stories. We hired this lady who was a wonderful, wonderful woman. She had just a ton of professionalism about her, but she'd only ever worked in the school office, basically. And we hired her. She had no prior bookkeeping or accounting experience of any kind. We spent, several months really investing in her professionally. She went on to basically run a multi-million-dollar engagement of ours with very, very little oversight from the accounting manager who was also involved in that. And she's now gone on to become she's now our bookkeepers manager. So she now manages all our other bookkeepers and trains them in the same ways that she was trained. And the asset that she has become to our organization because we invested in her early training has come back and repaid us tenfold. And along those same lines, when we take accounting managers and help them to understand how to take everything that's being gathered on our client's behalf and learn to interpret it and see it through the eyes of the business owner and start to understand what the business owner would care about, they become much more passionate about their jobs. They become much more excited about what they're doing, and they become true resources and assets to our clients as well as I have found that when we train people and when we make this training a core part of our culture, it creates a lot of collaboration within the organization because they all grow in respect for each other and they all rely on each other. And they've all learned so much from each other that it really creates positive culture in a really meaningful way as well.
So what I'm hearing you describe is you're investing in the employee, and there's two things going on. One, when you find a valuable employee, someone that has a good work ethic, someone that is committed, that you see passion, if you can tap into that and get loyalty, and through your training, get them to see that you're valuing them and appreciating them, they're going to stick around. They're going to come to the table, take care of the clients. They're going to go above and beyond when it's necessary. And the nice part about this is as you're training, you're also bringing in this continuity. Everyone's being trained similar in a similar way or with the same program. So there's that culture that you've created. Everybody's got that same foundation. And now as you're wanting to grow your business, you're able to then bring in some additional skill sets and certifications, getting them trained in expertise type areas that are either niche specific or service specific, and build them out at higher rates. So I love the journey that you shared of that one woman. She obviously had those skills that you were able to then develop, and now she's an integral part of your business. So that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to have what we call our bookkeeper success stories, because we take people who otherwise wouldn't have. I mean, I would argue that a lot of our bookkeepers are better accountants than a lot of the accountants out on the market because they've been taught fundamentals in a really meaningful way. They've been taught best practices. They've been taught to view things differently. They've been taught to think critically. We had another bookkeeper who was on our team that within just a couple of months on a new engagement, she found $100,000 worth of fraud that was being committed by one of the company's team members outside of their accounting department, because she had been taught to think critically and was empowered to, like, she knew we would listen to her. She knew we valued her opinion. She knew we would hear what she had to say. And she looked at her job from a critical perspective instead of just data entry. She evaluated things and thought things through and considered different things and was able to identify a major problem that the client had no idea what was going on. And it wasn't the controller that found that, it was the bookkeeper.
Yep. I'm going to say something here that I firmly believe, and to everyone in the accounting profession, I hope this somehow resonates. It's the fact that I love finding a bookkeeper, an accountant, someone who loves accounting to the point that they turn the financials into a story that is fun and easy to understand. And it's almost like being a chorister, taking the information and making music out of it. It's not enough to just simply record the transactions and pick where it goes on the balance sheet and where it goes on the P&L and just say it's there and here you go. There's got to be correlation and relationship to not just the revenue, but the COGS and expenses to the revenue. It's like there's a symbiotic relationship here. And at the end, it's got to be a story. And when it's told to the business owner, it's got to relate to what they're living and experiencing. It can't just be, oh, okay, that's going to suffice for tax purposes. So when I hear you say that somebody got vested enough that they started to see things that didn't make sense and they challenged them, it's almost like you're up there conducting an orchestra and you've got an instrument, it's a person over here that just doesn't play well enough and it's ruining the music of everything. And it's like, why? And you get to the point of either I've got to change the person or change the person. So that's the thing that I think is great. So here's what's going to happen. I just want to speak very quickly about our sponsors again, and then we're going to wrap this up. The first thing I want to do is reiterate the sponsor, Universal Accounting Center, promoting the program, Becoming a Profit and Growth Expert. It's an excellent program for you to be able to address that key issue that addresses so many businesses, which is cash flow management. But more importantly, it's also giving you the marketing and sales strategies that you need to go out and find the clients that you need, in fact, as a profit and growth expert. But in addition to that, I'd like to share with you the program, the Virtual Bookkeepers Roadmap. This is specifically addressing the issues that Brittany brought up about your practice management, strategies, systems, processes that you have in your business to ensure that there is a proper workflow for your work to be done profitably. So if you'd like to learn more as to what you can do to make sure that your business is functioning efficiently and profitably, look at becoming enrolled in and participating in the Virtual Bookkeepers Roadmap. So with that being said, I've got some fun questions to quickly ask you, something that I think you're going to enjoy. The first thing is Brittany, what's your go-to food? If you had to have something right now for lunch or dinner, what's that go-to thing that you like to get?
I am sad to say it's Dr. Pepper, and I have a serious addiction that I've been trying to kick. But if I could only live off of one thing for the rest of my life, it would be Dr. Pepper.
Dr.
Tragic.
Pepper. Well, mine's Diet Dr. Pepper, so you're all right. We're in good company. So this is the other thing. You brought up earlier balance. You were talking about earlier on this challenge of being a single mother and obviously going to school and getting employed and then starting your business. But you also spoke of it of when you started your business, you wanted to offer that flexibility to the employees, and many of them work part-time. So when you talk about life balance and that striving for that, what are you describing? What does that really mean to you?
So, and a lot of this comes back to what we've decided to identify as a firm, because like a lot of times when I talk to people and I talk about like all the initiatives we put in place, they feel overwhelmed and a little unhappy. And I have to remind them that they're not necessarily trying to be a high growth firm like we are. They're trying to be a lifestyle fit firm. And the strategy around becoming a lifestyle fit firm is entirely different than the strategy around being a high growth firm. And high growth firm is going to cost balance and whereas if I was a lifestyle fit firm, I would be focused all the time on balance as my primary objective. That's where I was before Stephen got involved, and it's really been his involvement that's allowed for us to transition into a high growth firm without it costing me my balance. So for me, because I work from home, I can go downstairs and I can like see my toddlers for lunch, and I can, we have in-house help that makes a huge difference. They cook and clean, and really I outsource every part of my like home life except for intimacy with my husband. Basically, like I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't do a lot of the other things that I used to do.
I'm glad you
But
drew the
it's
line
about
somewhere.
I know I had to draw the line somewhere, right? Like, but it makes a big difference for me. And if I was trying to be a high growth firm and keep a house clean and make dinner every night and do the laundry, I would be losing my ever loving mind. So that's been a big difference for me. I would either choose not to be a high growth firm, or I would choose to have a lot of help like I do right now.
Good.
Um, it allows me to focus on the parts of parenting that I actually find really valuable, the parts where I like help them with their homework or talk to the teenagers about their love interests, because I'm not coming downstairs to a house that's a wreck and dinner that has to be done. Like I know not everybody has that option, but it has made the biggest difference for me, is outsourcing all the house stuff that I just don't want
Well,
to
thank
do.
you for sharing that. I mean, obviously, what this whole podcast is meant to address is building the premier accounting firm. And oftentimes, life gets in the way of work and work gets in the way of life. And you found for you what's worked to allow you to actually get balance, which is a good relationship with your family, not being distracted by the labors involved in maintaining the household, while also having this high growth firm going on that you're successfully running and operating and growing. So it's caused you to be pulled and stretched in some of the similar ways that we're all stretched, and you found solutions that are working for you. And I love sharing that you've shared those with us. So here's my last question. Who has been a mentor to you and why? What did you learn from them?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, as far as like, I hired a sales coach early on. I mean, not a sales coach. I hired a CEO coach early on that I only just barely stopped working with, just like probably 6 months ago. And he brought me a lot of clarity regarding what I wanted to be as a business owner and my role as a CEO, and finding the balance in that space and helping me work through like the constant tug between I'm a super ambitious person, but I really, really, really want to be home with my family. And he really helped guide me on that journey. As far as mentors go, it's been tricky because we've been such a rapidly growing firm in such a unique market. That's kind of a new market, that there aren't a lot of people in the space that are farther ahead than we are as far as like, oh, this company that started 10 years ago, this is who I want to be. Like the client accounting service space is a fairly new space to the accounting market. And so I have a lot of peers and a lot of people that I really respect. Probably the guy that I respect the most is a guy named Kenji Kuramoto. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right.
Yeah, I know who you're referring to. Yeah.
He owns a company called Acuity, and I just love that guy. He's such a good man. He's a lot farther ahead than we are. And he's somebody who has always been very willing to help me when I needed help. Like just 2 days ago, I said, hey, Kenji, who's in charge of your practice success, like your client success, and can our service delivery director talk to them? And he said, sure enough. And he sent over an introduction right away. And he's always allowed me to pick his brain and ask him questions. He's always been very forthright. I just really appreciate him as a professional and what he's doing and the way he approaches it and the man that he shows up with within the industry.
Excellent. I appreciate your sharing that, because I think all of us, if we look closely, we will either purposely or just happenstance have these influences in our life. And I'm glad you've got a key individual that you can default to and refer back to. What I'd like to do is actually do a quick recap of our conversation today. But before I do that, I'd like to share once again our sponsors, that of Universal Accounting Center. The program, Becoming a Profit and Growth Expert, is key to offering quality services with the most common situation or issue that's faced by small businesses, which is cash flow management, literally taking your clients in a very clear and concise way from red to black. The other is that it gives you the specific training that you need in both marketing and selling effectively your accounting services. The other is that of becoming a person that is implementing within your business proven strategies, processes, systems to ensure that you're being efficient with your workflow, following the principles taught in the Virtual Bookkeepers Roadmap program. So look into those, check out more. With this in mind, I'd just like to thank Brittany for just kind of sharing these things. One, I loved how you opened up and shared your introduction to accounting. For so many people, I think it's not that longing of, since I was a young person, wanting to get into this because it came naturally to me. It was definitely, in your case, something that was, for lack of a better word, forced upon you, and you embraced that.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yep, forced upon me.
Forced upon you, and you embraced it. And so many times, again and again, you've risen to the occasion. You've addressed the situation and risen above it. So I applaud you for that. You did so well in school. You worked into the accounting profession, then started your own business. You've grown your business to be something significant and substantial. You're niching within that e-commerce market that I think is so powerful. But the advice that you shared today, that of marketing, you talked of being likable and competent, basically getting out there, letting everyone know what you do, and then letting the work speak for itself. And that competency is also allowing you to be profitable. You valued that balance and wanted to offer something unique, that you obviously chose to offer part-time employment opportunities for working mothers and the like, so that they could actually stay engaged with their lives and keep that balance. But you also figured out for yourself how you needed to, with the growth of your own business, to maintain that balance. And you chose, these are the things I have to give up, and I need to find help. And you're willing to ask for help, and you were willing to pay for that help, and you got what you needed so that you can actually be that star person, be ever present as the business owner, while also being the mother and spouse that you are. Now, with all this in mind, I love the advice that you gave regarding the business, marketing, the accounting services, the production. Mapping the business is, I think, so essential. And that's one of the things we stress here at Universal Accounting Center, is truly mapping the business. And as the owner of an accounting firm, having a clear understanding of those three key areas of the business. So with all that in mind, I do want to thank everyone for listening to this episode. Definitely listen to the others that we have, and subscribe to this podcast, Building the Premier Accounting Firm in your area. As you build your premier accounting business, you'll do so effectively when you try these and implement these tried and proven methodologies. For more information on how you can apply these principles in your business, please visit us at universalaccountingschool.com, or give us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is universal. Thanks for joining us. And Brittany, take care. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having me, Roger.
Bye-bye.